the first part of the fight scene, I throw a right hook and he blocks it, right? I don't know if you can see this, but he blocks it with his hand.
Uh-huh.
So we did like 100 takes total across, 5 hours or 7 hours that day. And some of them were with a stunt double, some were with him. And meanwhile, you can't fake this, right? So I'm throwing what's supposed to look like a full speed punch, which means they got to throw a full speed block. So I take about 100 hits onto the arm. And by the end of the night, my arm is absolutely throbbing. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do any more of these. Hey, someone give me some Advil. Can someone get me something for this? Like, I don't want The Rock to hear this, but I need some Advil over here because this thing is throbbing if I'm going to get through the night. A few days later, my arm was entirely purple. But that was like, my first intro into the acting world was fake getting beat up, but actually taking some pain from it, which was funny.
Welcome to the Raw Facts Podcast. I'm your host and producer, Ben Arthur, joined by a guy of many talents, Nate Richman. He is an NFL agent with 3XL Sports Management, but he's also an actor. So he kind of does multiple things, does both of them very well. Nate, how's it going, man? It's good to see you.
It's going great, Ben. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate being on here and getting a chance to just chat with you for a while.
No problem. No problem. Thanks again for joining me and we'll kind of talk about how you maybe juggle being an agent and being in the entertainment industry at the same time. But to start, just wanted to hear a little bit about your story, your upbringing. I know you're from Massachusetts. Just what was your kind of upbringing like, and how did that maybe shape who you are today?
Sure, absolutely. So as you said, I was born in Massachusetts, grew up about 40 minutes south of Boston, and, was always very passionate about sports and athletics and doing well in school, and started finding success on the field and on the court, and was the type of guy who was playing every sport, making sure, I was taking advantage of each season. And my parents would tell you whatever season I was in was my favorite sport, right? I was that type of kid who was just getting after it and competing, whether it was baseball, basketball, football. And then as I got older and got into high school, it became clear that football was really where I had a chance to really excel and play at the next level, and develop that passion for football probably my freshman, sophomore year of high school, and really just was all in on football. Continued to play basketball, did track and field. But, for me, football was clearly going to be the path going forward. And all the while, I guess it's relevant to this conversation, all the while had several passions. And I've always been someone who tries to keep myself well-rounded, both in business, both in life, everything I'm doing. I like to keep a variety of passions and pursue all of them to the best of my ability. So all the while was still doing a lot of different things that weren't sports related, one of them being theater. So grew up doing plays and taking acting classes and those type of things, in addition to, really enjoying athletics and pursuing that heavily as well. So, that's really the upbringing that brings you to high school and pre-college there.
For sure. And to kind of go off of that, Nate, I mean, as you said, you kind of did multiple sports. You were in theater, obviously playing football at a high level. I guess, did your parents maybe help kind of nurture that, like just in terms of you being willing to dip your toes in a bunch of different things? What was that? Did that maybe come from your family, or is that your personality? How did that maybe come about, wanting to do so many different things?
I think it's a lot my personality of just having several different passions and just going all in on everything I'm doing and trying to be great at everything I'm working on. But also, they were very nurturing to the environment. So to say, it's not like they were these intense football parents who said, hey, you got to go play football, you got to play sports, you got to get a scholarship, all that. I mean, that all came out of my drive. It was never any type of pressure in my family. I'm the third of three children. My brother played college football at the Division III level. My sister was never big on the sports side of things. So it was helpful in the sense that my parents were never saying, hey, you got to play football, you got to go play at the highest level, you got to go play in college, get a scholarship. They were very welcoming to anything we wanted to do and allowed us to pursue all those passions, and very supportive of all that. So that environment allowed me to really take advantage of these different opportunities and find these passions to pursue. So that was great growing up, and to me, it's really shaped who I am and what I've done for the last several years. And I think that's important. I think that's very important. Obviously, we've seen a shift now as a parent of three, and my oldest is only 5, but you see cousins and neighbors who are strictly hockey players or strictly
Mhm.
lacrosse players, and it's 365 days a year, and it's 5 a.m. and it's all this. And for me, it was all right. 2 months of football, 2 months of basketball, 2 months of baseball or track, and then summertime, right? And I think that made me a more well-rounded athlete, and being able to pursue things off the field too and have those passions, I think it made me a more well-rounded person, which has definitely served me further into the future as well.
Definitely. Yeah, you touched on something there, like with specialization with young kids. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, right? But the fact that you were doing kind of multiple things, I think that I mean, yeah, you got to express your personality best that way, and kind of dabble in different things. You truly figure out what you do and don't like. So I
And
think that's
and
really
I think it
cool.
gives you a sense of putting yourself in different situations, putting yourself
Yeah.
in different uncomfortable zones and fighting through those type of things and challenging yourself and meeting different types of people too, and starting to learn about different ways of coaching, whether that be in sports or coaching in the classrooms, coaching on the stage, whatever it is. You start to develop those type of leadership skills in different areas. You start to learn to take different types of coaching. So in my opinion, keeping yourself well-rounded in sports and also out of sports, to me, makes you a more complete person and develops a lot of skills that you can bring into the future.
And Nate, you had mentioned, I think you said around freshman, sophomore year of high school is when you figured out that football was really going to be your thing. And obviously you played at Boston College, an ACC school. You played like you weren't just on the team, like you played. You were a captain. You were a starter on the O line there. Um, playing at Boston College, playing high major college football. Just what was that experience like for you?
Absolutely. So yeah, like you said, it was around sophomore year where I started getting looks from schools, talking to schools. I went to a small private school in Braintree, Massachusetts called Thayer Academy. So not a powerhouse, not a lot of schools typically rolling through and looking at players over at Thayer Academy. So was a new experience for myself, for my family, and ultimately decided I wanted to stay close to home. Had a fair amount of well, at the time we called it 1A and 1AA. 1A offers, same with 1AA, like all the Northeast type of schools. Ultimately decided to go with Boston College when they offered me. And again, for me, it's always been about taking on the challenge and conquering it and setting goals for myself and living up to those goals and doing everything I can, whether that's in football or in life or in business now. So at the time, it was, hey, go get that BC scholarship, and was fortunate that I worked hard enough and had great resources around me that I was able to get noticed by BC and get that scholarship. And then coming into BC, there's still the sense of doubt of, hey, I'm a freshman from a small Massachusetts school. Do I even belong here?
Hmm.
You start to stack up the days and really compete and work your tail off. And all of a sudden, the next goal is become a starter, and the next goal is be a captain, right? And started to chip away at all those and work relentlessly to make sure those could happen. And had a great experience. Was fortunate to be on some great teams and play with some amazing football players and develop some great brotherhood out of that too.
What was the NFL ever a goal for you? Or how did maybe that kind of unfold into you maybe going the agency route instead of playing?
Yeah, so for me, the NFL was never the dream. Really, it was never again grow up and everything was towards being a professional football player. It was more nearsighted for me. It was really just attack the next goal, attack the next goal. And by the time I got into my 5th year and was playing that year, I had a couple disc issues, and frankly, was really just sort of fizzled out from making football every minute of every day and the business side of playing football, which ironically I'd get into the business side of football, but
Yeah.
the business side of what football brings on the field. And I had started my master's in business. So I graduated in 4 years, started a 5th year of football, but started the MBA program at BC that 5th year and was really excited about the business courses I was taking and pursuing that path. So I never did pro day, did anything like that. At that point, I was ready to hang it up and pursue the next chapter. And while I was getting my MBA, I really did a bunch of networking, a bunch of reflecting on what I wanted to be doing, what was going to make me passionate for the next career, right? And ultimately decided that I did want to stay involved with sports, and did a bunch of exploring as to what's out there, right? The business of sports can mean a million different things. It
Yeah.
could be team side, brand side, agency side, which I would find out. So did a bunch of networking, talked to people, and was fortunate that I got connected with someone who was in Boston named Kristen Kaliga. And Kristen, I don't know if you know Kristen, but she's really one of the pioneer women in this industry, if not the pioneer woman in this industry. She represented and represents Doug Flutie. So
Mm.
uh, she had a company called K Sports and Entertainment, and I met Kristen right after I graduated with my MBA and started working with her at K Sports. So was not dead set on becoming an NFL agent, and didn't grow up dreaming about that or saying, hey, I got to follow this blueprint to go become an agent. I more fell into it and started working with Kristen at K Sports in 2013. We had some fun opportunities at the time with Doug Flutie, Vince Wilfork. We represented a bunch of guys on the field too. So some really cool opportunities. Got my feet wet initially off the field, and then after a few months, she and I started talking about me becoming an agent and getting certified. And I got certified as a NFLPA contract advisor that first year. So again, was never the dream or the ultimate goal, but really sort of fell into it. And it's obviously been a great fit for me going forward.
Absolutely. And Nate, with kind of falling into it, where does kind of the acting thing, how did that kind of
Yeah.
become part of your story too? I know you said you had done theater like growing up. Is that something you continued into college? And how did that really, with kind of getting into NFL, like being an NFL agent and whatnot, how did the acting thing become part of your story as well?
Yeah, so there's sort of two parallels that don't really intersect at all, which is funny. When I committed to BC, I sort of made a promise to myself, having been doing so many different things that weren't football related in high school, knowing that Division 1 ACC football was really going to take over. I had made a promise to myself to make sure that that's not all I did in school. So whether it was in the classrooms, in the community, whatever it was going to be, I wanted to make sure I maintained that well-roundedness, that plethora of passions, as opposed to being totally narrowed in on one thing. Despite what your coaches will want to hear when you're an ACC football player. But that was important to me, and that's who I was, and that was my identity. Wasn't just a football player; it was being more than just a football player and pursuing these passions. So, long story short, I ended up taking a few acting classes while at BC.
Mm.
Was in a couple shows while at BC. Made sure that I was able to do that while I was there, and then after graduating, as I mentioned, got involved with the agency side of things. Didn't really think about acting for a couple of years. Still had a little bit of an itch, but didn't know what would be next, right? You're out of college. I'm not going to go do community theater. So there was no real, hey, you can go act and do this and continue that passion. And then out of the blue, my aunt is a musician based out of Boston. And so she follows casting calls for different production companies close by. And out of the blue, she forwards me an email that says, looking for tall, jacked bros for a feature film. And I said, hey, I'm tall. At the time, I was pretty jacked. So, hey, I can be a bro. So let's see what this is all about. I had to send a resume and a headshot. I didn't have either. I had
Mm.
a real resume, but not an acting resume. So I had my dad take a picture of me, and I put down the theater courses I had taken as a resume and sent it in, and wasn't expecting anything from it. A few days later, I got a phone call, and they said, hey, we want you to come in and audition for a feature film that we're doing in Boston starring The Rock. And so I grew up a huge Rock fan. And I said, tell me when and where I need to be, and I'll be there. Had never done anything like this, had never been to a real audition, a professional audition before. And so went to the audition, did what they asked me to do. Again, was not expecting anything. A few weeks went by. I was like, all right, that was cool. That was fun. Get another phone call, and they said, hey, we want to bring you back in for the director. I was like, whoa, okay.
Getting
So
real.
yeah, exactly. A
Yeah.
few weeks later, I'm in there doing it for the director, and there were a few other jacked bros there. Doing the same thing I was. So I was like, these guys probably been doing this for years. No chance. Again, thought it went well, but didn't think much of it. A few weeks go by. I figure it's over. They don't tell you that it's not happening, right? You only get a good news phone call. You don't get a bad news phone call. Nobody calls you and call. They don't call the thousands of people auditioning for things and say, "Hey, we're not picking you. We're going with somebody else," right?
Yeah.
So no news is bad news in this case. So ended up getting another phone call, and they said, "We want you to come in and work with the stunt director and the Rock stunt double." I said, "Wait a second. Why are we doing stunts here?" And that's when I found out it was going to be a fight scene. So
Mm.
I didn't know if there were 5 other guys doing this. Turns out I was the only one at that point that they had narrowed in on. And they just wanted to see if I could do what they needed. And went in, did the stunt audition, and a few weeks later found out I got the part. So that was for a film called Central Intelligence that was filmed in Boston with Kevin Hart and The Rock. And yeah, it was my first time doing anything like that, auditioning, being on set, and fortunate enough that I had that amazing opportunity. Spent 3 days on set there and was fighting The Rock, which was, I guess, a childhood dream I never knew I had. Picking a fight with Kevin Hart and getting beat up by The Rock. So it was an amazing experience, and that was the first experience that really catapulted the acting career that has existed since then.
So a few questions. First thing, you grew up watching The Rock, as you said. Were you starstruck getting to be not just meet him and see him, but like you're acting with him, right? What was that experience for
Yeah,
you?
it was more don't screw this thing up, right? So I didn't really have time to be starstruck because I was like, don't flub your lines, don't mess up, trying to keep know exactly what I was supposed to do for the fight scene. So definitely embrace the moment and enjoyed the fact, when he gives you an eyebrow raise and you're looking straight across from him, that's pretty surreal. But it was more don't screw this thing up. And pretty funny story is that the first part of the fight scene, I throw a right hook and he blocks it. Right. I don't know if you can see this, but he blocks it with his hand.
Uh-huh.
So we did like 100 takes total across, 5 hours or 7 hours that day. And some of them were with a stunt double, some were with him. And meanwhile, you can't fake this, right? So I'm throwing what's supposed to look like a full speed punch, which means they got to throw a full speed block. So I take about 100 hits onto the arm. And by the end of the night, my arm is absolutely throbbing. And I'm like,
Oh
I
my
don't know if
gosh.
I could do any more of these. Hey, someone give me some Advil. Can someone get me something for this? Like, I don't want The Rock to hear this, but I need some Advil over here because this thing is throbbing if I'm going to get through the night. A few days later, my arm was entirely purple. But that
Oh
was
my
like
god.
my first intro into the acting world was fake getting beat up, but actually taking some pain from it, which was funny.
Being someone who's gotten to see, I mean, so many people are curious about The Rock. I mean, he's such a huge celebrity and has fans all over the world and everything he's done in WWE and football and business of sports and everything. Just getting to be with him acting. What can you maybe say about just the way he approached the craft and maybe did you take anything from that as well?
Yeah, I would say two things that stood out. One was how genuine he really was. I mean, I myself and the other guys who were in that scene are down here and he's all the way up there in our industry, right? In that industry. And he took the time to get to know everybody's name, ask us questions, just to have small talk when now, this many years later, I've been fortunate to be in a lot of those situations. And a lot of those higher type of actors won't take that time. They won't care if someone's only there for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They're just going to get the job done and be out of there. And he really genuinely took interest in us and had conversations with us, which was really cool. The other thing is he's just such a professional. I mean, he's so detail oriented, such a professional. He walked in and he had not been taught the choreography for the fight yet. And obviously, this goes back to his wrestling days, which I'm sure it's a new fight every night, and you have to memorize the choreography in 10 minutes. But he walks in, the stunt director's like, "All right, Dwayne, you're going to do this, boom, 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 smack the guy's head in the table, catch the gun, walk out." And he's like, "Okay." Then he did it the first time. So he nailed it the first try. So yeah, I
Oh
mean,
wow.
those are the big first two takeaways, just how genuine of a guy he was. And how professional he really was and a master of his craft.
Has there been anyone else you've been kind of starstruck to get to be around or to be in a cast with? I know you mentioned Kevin Hart. I know you've been in a film with Jason Bateman as well, and a number of other people. Apart from The Rock, has there been really anyone that's you're kind of like, oh wow, like I'm in this thing with this person, this woman, this man? Has there been anything like that?
I wouldn't say starstruck. There's been some really cool people I've been fortunate enough to work with. I worked with Jake Gyllenhaal for 7 weeks in a film called Stronger. I was in a film with Leonardo DiCaprio in a scene with him. So there's been some really amazing people I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to act with. But it's like football, right? If you're the wide receiver and you walk into Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady's locker room, you can't be like, "Oh my God, it's Patrick Mahomes." It's like, no, you have to go run your route, have a great route, and catch the football, even though he's the
Yeah.
one in the huddle telling you what to do, right? You have to be focused on your job and your task and get the job done. And obviously have fun doing it and appreciate the experience and be a student too, right? If you get the opportunity to be in front of a Jake Gyllenhaal or a Patrick Mahomes and you're the backup quarterback or you're the wide receiver, take as much out of that opportunity and that experience as you can and learn from it and try to grow from it. Just really embrace that moment.
Now, Nate, how on earth do you balance being an agent and being in the acting industry? Like, how do you do both? I can imagine a bunch of scenarios where they can probably conflict in terms of maybe obligations that you have on both sides. How do you make that work?
Yeah, so fortunately, I don't have that issue. Fortunately, no one's knocking on the door for the acting stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
I've,
yeah.
I've had some
The
cool
strike.
opportunities. I've been fortunate to to really do some cool things on the acting side, but the agency is the full time focus and job. And if I'm fortunate enough for something on the acting side to come up, then I love to dive into it as long as it's convenient. But I'll do one or two things a year typically, and some of those are just a day, right? When I was doing the thing with Leonardo DiCaprio, that was a 1 day thing. When I've been on some episodes of FBI, those are just 1 day shoots. So it doesn't take a lot of time. I'm fortunate that I am able to maintain that sense of pursuing multiple passions, getting a taste of the acting, but it's very much agency focus. And if something cool pops up and I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity, then jump in on that as long as it makes sense.
How have you maybe because I feel like a lot of times when we see people doing multiple things, it's all within the same realm, right? Like if you're um like just with the entertainment industry, like kind of what you're a part of, like you can be an actor, but you could also be a producer, writer, screenwriter, all these things. But if they do multiple things, it's all in one area, and the fact that you do two completely different, you're in two completely different avenues, right? How do you maybe make sure that you don't stretch yourself too thin, or that you can really lock in on um kind of what your priorities are? Like you said, kind of the agency is your priority, but when you do have this strong passion for something else, how do you make sure you're giving both the time they require?
That's tough, obviously.
Yeah.
Those are two industries specifically that are very competitive, extremely demanding of time and energy and effort. So I think it would be extremely difficult to pursue both of those full time. I don't think it would make sense. Something would have to give because, if you have a movie that's going on during draft week and you have to be on set for 12 hours, you're not going to give your clients the full attention that they need and that you've promised and that you need to deliver to them. Right. Just like if you were trying to if you were a full time actor and you wanted to be an agent and you're on the phone in between takes all the time talking to clients and talking to teams, you're not giving your full attention to what you need to do on set. So I think those two industries specifically would be extremely difficult to balance full time capacity. But I think it's very healthy. Like with our clients, our NFL clients, I love when guys have passions off the field. We have guys who are big into art, guys who are big into fashion, and we're helping them pursue those passions off the field and find avenues to express themselves and push that going forward, even in their playing days. I mean, with us, we're big on that 360-degree approach. So it's not just contracts and on the field, but it's also life and business off the field and getting ready for life after football too, and preparing for that while that jersey's on. So I think that's a healthy thing in particular for NFL players too, bringing it back to the agency side is, hey, you can go play in the NFL and you have a lot of time in the off season where you can go get a degree, or you can go do this fashion show, or work on your art, or whatever it is that you are passionate about. So to me, that's what the acting is for me. It's like a healthy passion project on the side of the agency focus.
Just from the outside looking in, I mean, there's probably no one better just in terms of as a client, right? You see a guy that has his focus on football, but is able to explore other passions.
It really comes down to taking the time to do it.
Yeah.
So if you prioritize it and that's your values as an agency and that's the approach you take, and you find the right resources to surround your players with, it's all about pushing that. I mean, I'll speak for us only. I mean, there's lots of agencies out there that I don't think spend the time or the effort on that. But for us, we tell our guys day one, the first conversation we have is, hey, if you're coming with us, you can expect more than just contract negotiations. You can expect this to be business on the field, but also taking care of the whole person and making sure that you're setting yourself up for years to come. However we can assist in that, however we can be a part of that process, surround you with those resources, we're here to do that. So that's a big part of who we are and why I do this. If I just negotiated contracts, it wouldn't be as fun for me. For me, it's about, doing the camp in the off season with the guy in his hometown and seeing hundreds of kids lined up just to come get an autograph and come out for a couple hours and have fun with that player. And these are guys who, when they first started out, were like, hey, I don't want to do a camp. No one's going to show up. And all of a sudden you have hundreds of guys lined up. It's about your player retiring or his career ending and calling him the next few months, and a year later he's doing this amazing thing in his life after football, his next career that you were helping him with 4 years earlier. Those are really the exciting pieces, in addition to everything on the field, that to me makes this job and this life so fulfilling that we have it in this agency world.
Nate, how do you feel that maybe football, being an agent representing guys and being an actor, being in the entertainment industry, what different aspects of you do you think those things kind of bring out? Like, how does what you get from being a football agent differ from what you get out of being an agent, or maybe what aspects of your personality do you feel like one thing brings out over the other, if that kind of makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, the agent side of it, there's fulfillment. For me, you're striving for fulfillment, and you're striving to pursue these passions and to do a great job doing it. The fulfillment comes different from both sides. The fulfillment of being on set and being in that moment and having acting partners to work with and doing some amazing stuff, like going through burning buildings and doing some really cool stunts and things like that. Like living in that moment, that energy, those goosebumps that you get from that, and just selling yourself 100% in that moment to what you're doing is an incredibly fulfilling experience, and one that I enjoy every time I get to do it. On the football side, there's a lot of different fulfilling moments that come with it. Making that phone call to a guy that he signed with a team, hearing your player's name called on draft day, doing the camps, doing the off the field things, telling the player that the contract's done, he's good to go, he got his second, third contract. Those moments, those experiences are incredibly fulfilling on the agency side of it. And we work with amazing human beings, not just football players. We're very particular in the types of players we want to work with and surround with those resources and be part of that journey with. So you truly develop that relationship with them and their family, and to be able to be a part of that with them is incredibly fulfilling.
And Nate, specifically back to kind of the acting thing, of all the movies or shows you've been a part of, what would you say was your favorite to be a part of the cast for, and why?
Yeah, it's definitely the film Stronger that I mentioned earlier. So Stronger's about the Boston Marathon bombing from 2013, and it focuses on Jeff Bowman, who lost his legs in the bombing and ultimately woke up from a coma and helped the FBI identify the bombers. So he remembered seeing one of the bombers and gave them the description that helped them find the bombers. And Jake Gyllenhaal plays Jeff Bowman, and I was playing his best friend.
Mm.
So that was the longest project I've ever been on, being on set for 7 straight weeks, feeling like you're really a part of the film as opposed to coming in for 1, 2, 3 days and really just going in and out and doing one scene. And it's like being on a team. It really is. You start to develop relationships when you're spending hours in a trailer or hours on set or working on your craft with other people. Same idea with the locker room, right? You spend hours on the bus, on the plane, in the locker room, on the field, grinding it out together, long days, you're hungry, whatever it is. You start to develop that sense of camaraderie, and it really does turn into a team. So I got that experience on that film, Stronger. Worked with some amazing local actors and some bigger name actors as well, and everyone was really really awesome to work with. And then the crew too. You know, there's the crew's like I guess like the X's and O's guys in the background of football, where you don't get all the attention, they don't see you, but you're holding a microphone or a camera that weighs as much as you do for a 14-hour day, and you don't ask for a break because no one will give you one if you did ask, right? And they're the first ones there and the last ones to leave. So just seeing all that unfold, being a part of that process for several weeks was definitely the best experience that I've had on the acting side. And again, amazing people I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with.
Nate, what's the ultimate vision for you with when we talk about kind of your agency being the priority, but also you have this massive passion for acting? When you think of your vision, what does that look like with both of those things?
Yeah, I think it's in a solid place right now, where 3XL Sports and myself as an agent are continuing to grow, and we're getting that into a place where we're really happy with it, and we're working with some amazing guys on the field and have a great client list, and then hope to be fortunate enough to get a couple opportunities on the acting side. And obviously, I mentioned earlier, I have 3 kids at home, so there's a lot of balance that comes with all of that, traveling as an agent, hoping for opportunities on the acting side, and then dropping the kids off at school and going to sports and all of that as well, which is my number one priority, right? So finding that balance and making sure I'm able to be number one dad and also number one agent for my clients. And then again, hopefully I get the opportunity to have some passion projects on the side. So that's how I envision it going forward, is continuing to really push the agency side of things, continuing to take on great clients, working with them on their lives on and off the field, and continuing to hope that some cool opportunities come up that I could take advantage of.
That's awesome. And Nate, to kind of wrap up, I want to do like this fun little rapid fire thing, since you're so yeah. So since you are kind of multifaceted, I wanted to make sure this touches on both football and the entertainment industry. So kind of the first thing, your top 3 football players of all time.
So growing up, I loved Dan Marino. So Dan Marino was my favorite, despite being a New England Patriot guy. Dan Marino was my favorite player growing up. And then in school, when I was at BC, I was all about the Patriots offensive line. They had an incredible offensive line at the time. So at that time, Logan Mankins was their left guard, and that old line was just full of savages. So we loved watching their film, and we had the beards going just like they did, everything like that. So Logan Mankins was my guy back then. And then let's see, I'd come up with a third favorite. I'm gonna stick with 2. Dan Marino growing up and Logan Mankins at
No third?
college. Now there's several favorites. So now I got to be a fan of all my guys.
Got it. Well, really quick thing. How does a guy who grows up in Patriots territory become a fan of a Dolphins legend? Like how did that come about?
I don't even know. I don't know if I liked their colors or mascot, or if I just watched him one day when I was 6 or 7 and just started to like him. But Yeah, I'm not sure what the origin of that is, but I just know that I had posters and cards and all kinds of stuff for Dan Marino.
Got it. All right, last football one. Your top 3 teams of all time.
To the
Top
year?
Yeah, and NFL teams. Yeah, like a year like the 2013 Seahawks, the 2001 Ravens, the
Well,
1985 Bears.
it's tough for a New England guy. There's 7, 16 to pick from, so I'd have to
Yeah.
balance out '04,
So you
oh,
could just say the Patriots is one, like the Tom Brady era is one, if you wanted to do that, or
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna stick to when I was living. I think it'd be tough for me to say, hey, the 1985 Bears or whatever if I wasn't around to watch them and appreciate them. So, in this last 30 years or so, I would tell you obviously the Tom Brady Patriots. I love the original the early Tom Brady Patriots when the defense was playing lights out. They had an amazing offensive line. Brady was a little bit younger and, spreading the ball out a ton. He used to use his running backs so great out of the backfield. And I know he used to use everybody. And that was a lot of fun to watch growing up. Um, I think the Chiefs lately, and these are obvious answers, but the Chiefs have done an amazing job with what they've been able to do with salary cap and free agency and continuing to find the right players. As an offensive line fan, just seeing the way they've constructed their offensive line and have done an amazing job with that from the front office standpoint has been very impressive. So, I think the Chiefs have done a great job building a sustainable franchise and team, which is the results have come from. So let's see, Patriots, Chiefs, and I wish I had a cool dark horse. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know.
Legion of Boom era Seahawks.
No, it's because they were going against the Patriots. So at the
Oh,
time,
yeah, that's true, that's true.
this is before I was too deep into the agent business. So I wasn't rooting for players. I was rooting for teams.
Got it.
I look at teams like the Ravens and the Steelers, and they just have an identity, which is something special. It's not necessarily about who's their quarterback, who's their star wide receiver or running back, but it's more like every year they're going to be competing, they're going to play tough, play physical, they're going to bring it. You can never take them for granted on your schedule, no matter what their record is, and they're always in the hunt. So those would be just two franchises that I really respect and think do a great job.
Okay. And now to the acting questions.
By the
Who
way,
are your
offline, I'm gonna have to ask you the same questions because I want to know what your answers are for those.
Yeah, for sure. No, I got you. Yeah, I'm an open book. But your top 3 actors.
Yeah. So some of my favorites. I mean, I've a lot of favorites, but I'm gonna think of people who I haven't worked with specifically, so that it's
Okay.
not biased. I love Tom Hanks. So Tom Hanks, you put me anything that Tom Hanks is in, I love it. Denzel. Denzel, I was a huge fan of growing
It's a
up.
goat for me. Yeah,
As a
Denzel.
teenager, I bought DVD cases that were just Denzel movies and just watched everything Denzel. And then we'll go with Christian Bale.
Okay.
I think Christian Bale is just a phenomenal actor. I like actors who every time you see a new film that they're in, you're not thinking that, oh, that's Christian Bale. And I think there's some actors where you're like, oh, that's so and so being so and so again, right? And there's a place for that, right? Especially in comedy. I think Will Ferrell being Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn being Vince Vaughn, those are great. Those are awesome. But as far as really being a phenomenal actor, someone like Christian Bale, who every time you see him, you're not thinking Christian Bale, but he's just so into that character, and he can be someone new every time you flip on a different film.
And last one, Nate, your top 3 sports movies of all
Oh
time.
man. So again, back to is it the best movie or my favorite to watch? That's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard one. It's very
I'll give you 50.
subjective. It's very subjective.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'll go with my favorites. So anytime I was sick from school growing up, I would just watch sports movies all the time. So I could quote, all the all the great sports movies to you, but I was a huge fan growing up of the Mighty Ducks. So the Mighty Ducks was an awesome one. The Sandlot
Oh,
and
classic.
and
Yep.
and Remember the Titans.
Oh, yeah, you got to put that one in there.
Those
That's
would probably
probably
be my top three. Being a young football player with the Remember the Titans, that was an awesome movie. And then the Sandlot was just a ton of fun, and I love the Mighty Ducks. So I would say, despite a lot of honorable mentions, those would be my top three favorites that growing up I had a really joy for.
awesome. Well, Nate, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining the show, and appreciate all of you guys for listening. You can find the Raw Facts podcast on YouTube. I would really appreciate if you guys can follow the show. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. You can find out all the latest in terms of new episodes coming out. But Nate Richman, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great.
Having me. Yeah, Ben's the man. Do all that. Follow him, listen to him, find him wherever you can, because he's the best at what he does, and he's one of the hardest working individuals I've met in this industry. So always on the grind, always on the move, and you do a phenomenal job with everything you touch. So keep up the great work. Thanks for having me.
Means a lot, Nate. All right, guys.